The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Q3 2021 PartsTrader Industry Update. I am Greg Horn, and let's begin. So what we wanted to go through is our quick agenda. First, we're going to be doing a review of the latest news affecting the collision and insurance industries. Then we're going to look at the latest on the microchip shortage and its vehicle production reductions and give an idea of what the seasonally adjusted annual rate's going to be at the end of the year. Then we're going to look at an update on Tesla and how new vehicle EV production is challenging their dominance in the market. Then we're going to look at the astonishing rise in catalytic converter thefts. It is through the roof and unbelievable. And then lastly, and I think what a lot of people have tuned in for, is an overview of the current situation on collision parts delays by car maker and by part type. But first, I did want to take a quick minute to thank each and every one of you for joining. We have hit an amazing milestone. We have over 400 listeners tuning in. So I'm very, very grateful that you've chosen to spend part of your day. And for those of you who cannot attend, remember we always include a recording so you can play it at a later date. But no presentation of mine is complete without a shameless plug, and this shameless plug is for the Aftermarket Body Parts Association annual meeting and convention. It is at the Renaissance Hotel in Nashville, September 21st through the 24th. I will be speaking the morning of the 23rd, giving an update that will be unique from what you're hearing today. So I do encourage you to attend if at all possible. First part of the news we wanted to look at is the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill that is going through Congress now. You know, we look at infrastructure bills and say, great, they're about increasing roads. You know, this one had a lot around 5G and high-speed internet access. But the finer print or buried deeper in the bill is a bill that affects our industry directly, or a part of the bill that impacts our industry directly. It says that basically all vehicles sold in the US will have to be equipped with forward collision warning system, autonomous braking systems, lane departure warning, and lane keep assist systems. Those are probably some of the most expensive pieces to those ADAS equipment components. And also it establishes new headlamp standards. Every time I hear a new headlamp standard, I think it automatically will increase the price of replacement headlamps. The interesting thing, though, is that they have not put a deadline on when these will be required. But think about this, folks. Every poverty spec vehicle sold in the US, that's a base model vehicle with an MSRP of under 20 grand, will have to have this type of equipment as standard. So we have an incredibly complex LiDAR front-facing collisions avoidance system. Any of those things, when you hit or rear end somebody in one of these vehicles, it's going to impact the repairability of these vehicles. And when they do go out for repair, they're going to require, of course, scanning and recalibration. So we're going to see an increase in repair costs. But we, you know, because this bill does not have a deadline, don't know exactly when that will be. I would assume, though, that it will be put in place by the 2024 model year. And if it's not mandated, you'll see the car makers making an attempt to get ahead of the curve and put them as standard equipment on more vehicles to amortize it over a longer period of time. The other interesting thing I wanted to take a look at is the impact of marijuana laws and collision frequency. You know, the third of the US states now have legalized recreational use of marijuana for adults 21 and older. The interesting thing is it has been associated with increases in collision claim frequencies in Colorado, Washington, and Nevada. And I reported a long time ago in Colorado when they first legalized, we saw an increase. It was only about 3.5%, but still a significant increase. And we also, interestingly, found an increase in repair time, in the length of the repair for repairable vehicles in Colorado. I also joked at the time that nobody seemed to care. But we do see now a decrease in the frequency in Oregon. So to give you some perspective, the collision claim frequency now in Colorado is 7.2% higher than in neighboring states that do not have legalized recreational use after a few years of legalization. Interestingly, Washington state legalized a few years ago. It has increased collision claim frequency by 5.6%. For Nevada, which also recently had or legalized recreational use, they had a claims frequency increase of 5.4% than the surrounding states of Utah and Idaho that do not have legalized recreational use. The interesting outlier in this equation, though, is the state of Oregon. Oregon had a decrease of 3.5% in collision claims frequency after legalization. Now, I would be curious to see what everybody's input is for this reason, that it's going opposite of the trend. I think potentially it's because folks in Oregon were well used to driving under the influence. We'll see. On to recall news. GM has recalled 330,000 Silverados and Sierras with the heavy-duty Duramax diesel 6.6-liter engine with the optional block heater cord. The reason I bring these to folks' attention, especially with insurance companies, is that if you have paid for a partial or total loss fire on one of these vehicles, you might want to look through the records, the claim payments, to see if any of these vehicles from the 2017 to 2019 Silverado 2500 and 3500, and same for the GMC Sierra. If you have paid out for a fire claim on some of these things, you may be entitled to go back against General Motors in subrogation. Also, the Chevy Bolt recall. This is now expanded to every single Bolt EV and EUV, which is their utility vehicle, sold in the US. That totals about 138,000 vehicles right now. GM and NHTSA have offered updated suggestions to Bolt owners to minimize the risk of fire, because this is going to take quite a while for the recalls to be completed. Now, one temporary remedy is that these vehicles should not be charged indoors, meaning they should not be charged in the garage overnight. I think what they're suggesting is that you charge them up during the day or at a charging station out in the open air. They also suggest you do not charge more than 90% of total battery charge. And then conversely, they also suggest that you do not allow the charge to go less than 70 miles to empty charge. So that apparently is the ultra high heat range for those batteries. The interesting thing, however, is Recurrent, and this is a pretty interesting company. It is a company that you can subscribe to as an EV owner, and it monitors usage of your battery. Now, their stats so far say that 30% of the Bolt owners who subscribe to Recurrent are not following these rules. Another quick update, this just came out on Monday. NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, has issued a fairly rare do not drive alert on over 800 Subaru Imprezas. Now, again, if I'm an insurance company, it shouldn't be too long if I could go to the underwriting folks, figure out our policies in force with 2021 model year Imprezas, and then go and take those VIN numbers from your policies and type them into NHTSA's recall system to see if you have a vehicle on your policy book, your book of business, that is subject to that recall. Folks that drive these vehicles may not have heard from Subaru. They are mailing out, of course, warnings, written letters. Some folks may not have gotten those because of change of address. So it is very important, if you have one of these vehicles on your book of business, that you do everything you can to make sure that these owners are aware. And on a lighter note, this is more of an annoyance and not truly a safety issue. Ford has recalled all of the brand new Broncos built to date with molded colored roofs, or molded in color roof. They suffer from a quality issue, and we're going to see a picture of that in a second, when exposed to extreme water and humidity levels. The recall will impact the delivery of new Broncos for many, many months. This is a roof that is manufactured by the sub-supplier called Webasto. They've been around for 60 odd years. Replacement roofs that meet the Ford standard won't be ready until October. They will prioritize, Ford has said they will prioritize the longer in service vehicles as to be first in line. This insert here, you can see what happens to exposure to the water and humidity levels. This substructure, you can see it's sort of a honeycomb, and it's not a uniform honeycomb appearance, but it's starting to seep through the color. And it makes for an unsightly appearance. But again, you know, this is not a huge deal, more of an annoyance than anything. But unfortunately, it delays deliveries of new Broncos. As we go to the bigger problem with the global chip shortage, North American automakers have cut production by another 106,000 vehicles, cars and trucks both, because of the chip shortage. Now, it is estimated that the worldwide production will actually end up at close to a 6.85 million vehicle reduction, which is kind of crazy. Just Monday, Ford announced that they're halting production again of the F-150 temporarily because of the chip shortage. And Stellantis, the parent company for Chrysler, has announced their Sterling Heights, Michigan, their Belvidere, Illinois, their Brampton and Windsor, Ontario plants, which produce their most popular vehicles, mainly the Chrysler Pacifica minivan or Voyager minivan, are all being stopped from production because of the chip shortage. To give you an idea of how serious this is for the big three domestic automakers, Ford is the heaviest hit, with 5 of their top 10 models facing delays. Stellantis has the Cherokee, the Compass, and as I mentioned earlier, the Voyager Pacifica all idled because of chip shortages. And Chevrolet with the Equinox and the Chevy Malibu, 2 of their top selling Chevrolet brands, all stopped because of this. And what does that mean in longer term? It truly means empty showroom floors. So much so that the seasonally adjusted annual sales rate of new vehicles was revised again downward in August to only 13.9 million vehicles. To give you some perspective, in April 2021, as people were starting to get out of the COVID lockdown, there was a fever to buy new vehicles. And the SAR in that month in April was raised to 18.5 million vehicles, which was a full 1.5 million vehicles higher than total 2019 US new vehicle sales, which topped out at 17 million vehicles. The interesting thing, and the reason that we always look at this, is that low US new vehicle sales contribute to the average age of a vehicle in the repairable fleet. But interestingly, it also increases the used car values and total loss vehicles. So what's happening here is we see an unusual circumstance that used car vehicles in the fleet that are subject to insurance repair are aging overall, but their values are higher, meaning more potentially could repair than be total loss, but the settlement value of those total losses will go up. That's kind of a bad three-way situation for insurers and potentially repairs. And it's interesting when the chip shortage gets so bad that quirky, and I'll use that term quirky, CEO Elon Musk in a tweet called out the chip shortage, and in particular 2 of their chip suppliers, Renesas and Bosch. That is highly unusual for a CEO to take that step to call out individual suppliers. I think it hints a little bit at his frustration. Now, he should be a little bit frustrated because as new EV builders come into the market, Tesla's dominance in the EV world is completely in play. If you can look at the first 5 months of 2021 compared to the first 5 months of 2020, you can see that there is only one Tesla model vehicle, the vehicle Model Y, that has an increase. And it is a very substantial increase, but we have to remember that that vehicle was only available in March 2020. So it is really a new vehicle sort of after March of last year. So that's the only reason that it has such a high percentage of increase. But look at the X and the S. I mean, they are down into low 4 digits. And the interesting thing is the Model S only sold in the first 5 months 1,653, and that's before the long anticipated EQS, the Mercedes S-Class that will compete head-to-head in pricing against the Model S. So he's a little bit frustrated. I could see that. He has made some improvements, I think, and Elon Musk is what I've always said is one facial scar away from being the perfect James Bond villain. But he has announced that after years of having a proprietary only charging station plug, he is not only equipping his Teslas with the standard non-Tesla plug for charging, so you can, with a Tesla vehicle now, pull up to non-Tesla branded charging stations, but also this year transitioning his charging stations from only having the proprietary Tesla plug to having the proprietary plug plus the standardized non-Tesla plug. And things don't get much better for Elon's global presence. His 4 billion euro factory has been under construction since 2020 in Grünheide, Germany. It is behind schedule, and now, of all things, production has been stopped by German court order. And you would say, okay, who is this big opponent? Who is the villain in this Elon Musk saga? It is the sand lizard. The German sand lizard apparently is an endangered species and hibernating in the area where this production facility is being constructed. Tesla has gone through the expense trying to relocate the lizards from the site, but they found that they have already built their hibernation dens, and the court has said that their reallocation or relocation of these sand lizards would not be enough to save the population. So the factory has to sit idle until the hibernation period is over. Again, more bad news for Elon. Don't feel especially bad for him because he is, after all, a billionaire. News of a Tesla in autopilot mode hitting a first responder vehicle in Florida happened Saturday around 5 a.m. And the vehicle was in autopilot. You can see there it's a Tesla 3 in autopilot. And it hit a state trooper's Dodge Charger, narrowly escaping hitting the trooper who was assisting a broken down Mercedes GLK. And it is the 11th incident of a Tesla in autopilot mode crashing into a first responder vehicle. So again, more bad news for Elon, kind of a bummer overall. And so we switch gears and we ask, what's a Fratzog? Well, this is actually a Fratzog. And people around my age would probably go, wait a minute, I know this symbol. And yes, folks, it is the old symbol of the Dodge division from the early 60s to about the mid 70s. And yep, Dodge is actually launching an EV. Those who thought that the Dodge division could barely spell EV, they are launching a full group of hybrids and an full electric concept vehicle. And you wonder, we haven't seen much news about this in the past, and it is truly because of the formation of Stellantis. Stellantis, part of the merger was to buy Citroën and their DS version or division, which is all EV based. So they are able to bring Dodge EVs faster to market than before their merger. And I'd mentioned about the catalytic converter thefts in the US reaching historical highs. To give you an idea, look at this. So reported thefts per month in 2018 were just 108 per month. So, around 1,200 or so a year. 2019, more than double of that. 2020, we saw 1,203. And in 2021, a total, it's amazing to me that 5,000 cats per month are being stolen. And again, you can buy these cordless Sawzalls from Harbor Freight for only $31.69 and go to a parking garage where there's not a lot of security, and in very quick order have a stolen catalytic converter in your hands that you can exchange because they are precious metal. Now, we know that you cannot buy these things used. They are not available used at all. The aftermarket really doesn't do a complete job of offering all model catalytic converters. There are some generic catalytic converters. But if you look at PartsTrader's order count over the last year, you can see that we have gone to just over 750 in June and 688 in July, monthly purchases of CATs through the PartsTrader platform. Now, again, this is a slight plug for our PartsTrader platform. We do offer catalytic converters quoted through dealerships, and you can see that there are a significant number that are fulfilled in the PartsTrader platform. If you are a repairer and having problems locating locally a catalytic converter, I encourage you to go on the system and look and see if you can get quotes for a CAT for the vehicle in need. And what we're all waiting for is the update on collision parts delays. And I want to give you a little bit of a background on this. Sorry, gone backwards a little bit. There we go. PartsTrader transacts over $100 million in parts every month. We are doing business with over a third of the collision repair body shops in the US every day. The number of quotes we have seen per part has remained very robust and very consistent for the last 12 months. You cannot quote in our system unless you can deliver that part. There are no phantom parts. Our data includes our DRP customer body shops, as well as voluntary use by collision repairs. Voluntary use means they are quoting and ordering parts outside of an insurance company mandate. That is our fastest growing segment of the business, and it's going very well. But the interesting thing is when you order or quote on a part, you not only get the price, the margin, and the suggested list, but you also get the quality, meaning is it CAPA, is it insurance quality, grade A quality, what have you, Keys IQ, and also you get quoted delivery times. And that's what we're really going to delve into. Because in our last update, we had heard anecdotal reports from some of the major part suppliers and manufacturers, in particular car makers, saying that there were delays in the collision repair environment and blaming it on backups in the Port of Los Angeles and other areas. But we really didn't see it in our data. We didn't see any systemic trends at that time. So what we do is we look at the delivery time trends as well as the quotes requested per trend. So the bottom chart says for every part that is put up in the PartsTrader system, on average, we get 8.1 quotes as of August. Now, the quoted delivery time is when you quote that part, it will also say, I can get you that part. Here's the buy price. And here is the suggested, or sorry, the quoted delivery time. So as we look at that delivery time, we do see in the last few months an increase overall. And we look at splitting it out by part type. And you can see that the number of quotes per part is very, very consistent, irrespective of part type. And you can see that there is just the ever so slight increase in quoted delivery times for recycled and aftermarket part. And we do see a pretty significant uptick in OEM in starting in a little bit in May, but going through June and July. Now, the interesting thing, this is the average. And I wanted to get into a little bit of a data geek mode here and look at the median and standard deviation rather than the average. And why is that? Well, we look at the median instead of the average because averages truly dilute the impact of outliers. When you measure the median, it's truly the middle number in a sorted ascending or descending list of numbers and can be a little bit more descriptive when you look at a complete data set rather than the average. Taking it even further, if we look at the standard deviation and this measures the amount of deviation or dispersion in a set of values. So the key here is that a low standard deviation number indicates that the values tend to be closely cropped towards the average, so a steeper bell curve, with a higher standard deviation indicating that the values are spread over a larger range or a wider range, meaning that there are more, if you have a higher deviation number, that means there are more delays, more outliers that are farther above what the median is. Using 2 standard deviations, this allows us to capture 95% of the behavior of the population. So what we do here is we look at the quoted delivery days, 2 standard deviations for all part types, and I'll walk you through this dashboard. So you can see the bar chart up in the upper left shows the median delivery date, which is a median of 1.1, and it's been very consistent across the board. When you look at 2 standard deviations, you absolutely can see that there are outliers in the quoted delivery days. So there are some pretty significant, remember again, the higher the number, the more outliers there are, the more broad that distribution is. Then we look at the upper right, and this rectangle shows the standard deviation distribution, 2 standard deviations, by vehicle make. And the larger the box, the bigger the population of vehicles. So you can see obviously Toyota is up there, Ford is up there, Chevrolet is up there, and the darker red, the bigger the outliers are, so there are more potential for delays. And you can look at this and see the outlier here is Kia in particular. You see a little reddish around Infiniti and Ram and Audi and BMW. Then when we swing to the chart below that, you can see some states. We see Wyoming, we see Massachusetts with some of these delivery date where it's more chronic than in other states. And then swinging across to the middle, you can see the pie chart. It shows again, it's all part types, and we're going to go down and explore it a little bit more by part type. And then we've done standard deviation by part, and then volume, ordered volume of those parts. So you can see, the standard deviation for front bumpers overall, all part types, is 7.2. So that is an increase from previous time periods. And you can also see it's the most popular quoted part at 424,000 quotes and orders through August for front bumpers. And you can see sort of outliers, hoods and grills having some of the highest standard deviation delays. When we split it out by OEM, we can see a little bit of change to things. We can see, again, more red. We see an interesting outlier, very dark blue. But remember, we've shifted this scale so that the bluest is 7.5 and the redder is 8.8. So again, it's a little shift over, but we do see more in the red overall. If you're wondering, you can see the Chrysler in dark blue. If you're wondering what that small blue vertical rectangle is, we want to look at this one over here. It does not have a name, but that is Mitsubishi. And color me very surprised that OEM Mitsubishi parts are performing better than other car makers, because if you've been in this industry a long time, Mitsubishi has always been one of those ones that has been more difficult to obtain parts for, especially new OEM parts, in a timely manner. So it could be that they are not as popular. Again, they're a very small section of the car park, so that could be contributing to the fact that they have more of a supply, less depletion because of lower overall collision frequency for Mitsubishis because of their market share. Then we switch to aftermarket, and really interesting here is you can see that, again, our deviation chart has changed back down. We were looking at between 7.5 and 8.8 when we talked about new OEM, but you can see overall we're talking about in aftermarket 2.7 to 3.6. So a very tight correlation. We can see outliers here of Honda, a little bit of Toyota, meaning it's sort of in the middle here. Honda pops up as having some of the biggest outliers in quoted delivery days. Mercedes-Benz and BMW also lesser than Honda, but still trending towards the red. You can see down here, Mitsubishi still in that area. And the only really true red state is the state of New Hampshire. When switching to recycled, again, a little interesting thing is we see a little bit of this light pink, for Dodge vehicles, bright red for BMW recycled, but that's really about it. So again, we're changing the scaling. It's 3.1 to 3.7, so super tight correlation. So overall, the delivery days are just around 2.1 days as the median, and you can see a pretty tight correlation. So, you know, when I mentioned earlier, the tighter the distribution, the lower the deviation number, the second standard deviation number, the tighter the correlation. So recycled parts don't really have as big of an issue. Aftermarket parts, again, we look at a pretty tight correlation. Here we're looking back again at aftermarket, and we can see there were delays earlier in 2020 during the beginning of the lockdown, but they have not increased to that effect and stayed dead even at just over 1 day median delivery. It is truly the OEMs where we're seeing a pretty broad increase in not only delivery days, the median has stayed fairly steady at 1.1 days, but the outliers have broadened that distribution. So what can we really conclude from this? There are longer delivery times than there were in earlier months, no question about it. The number of part quotes or quotes per part has remained remarkably steady, indicating it doesn't appear to be a shortage of parts, but rather delays in deliveries to the repair shop, primarily from OEs. And what we're going to say here is that is potentially they are being searched from other PDCs, parts distribution centers, and therefore taking a bit longer. We do see some delivery mechanisms like UPS, like FedEx, and some of the others with an overabundance of deliveries needing to be made. So they're running at capacity. And I think that could also deliver some delays. But the OEM parts in particular have had the longest deviations from the median. And there are several parts inside the OEM part categories, wheels and hoods in particular, with long delivery days. Now, when it comes to wheels, cars can be put back into service with donut spares, probably not the best way to get a car back on the road, or potentially more used wheels as an alternative to get that car back on the road. Same with hoods. You could buy aftermarket or potentially recycled hoods. Again, in the PartsTrader system, because we're quoting not only the price for the shop, the profit margin and the delivery days as well, you can make those decisions for yourself. So as we reach conclusion on that, I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and then any additional questions. Now, I have asked this before, but if you have any questions that you don't want me to read out loud into it or answer in front of a broader audience, I'm perfectly fine with you emailing me at greg.horn@partstrader.com. But let's take some of these questions. The first question, again, talks about quoted times being delayed due to FedEx and UPS being overwhelmed. This comes from a good friend of mine, Ken Weiss. Yes, I actually am hearing and have, we are in discussions with one of these two vendors to talk about an expedited program for PartsTrader users. But all of the delivery folks that we've seen, and it is primarily UPS and FedEx, are talking about how they are they have tenured drivers. They are struggling to get new drivers into the trucks because of their increased volume. We saw it. More people are ordering stuff through Amazon than ever before because of sort of coming through the lockdown. And so, yeah, they're battling to keep truck space along with other packages that are being distributed. Again, that we have dealerships that are making milk runs multiple times a day. We have, the aftermarket, large aftermarket suppliers and recycled suppliers also doing milk runs multiple times a day in order to keep these parts out and in repairers' hands. Any other questions we can take? We'd be happy to do that. Okay. Yeah, here comes an interesting question from John Schneebeis that says, you mentioned quoted times. What are the actual delivery times or the difference? Now, the quoted times are what the part supplier quotes and guarantees that he will have the part delivered by that time. We do not have a mechanism at this point of measuring what those delivery services, whether it's a milk run or the delivery services like FedEx or UPS, are quoting at this time versus, or actually sort of a keys to keys delivery time. We are looking to make that enhancement, but the quoted delivery times are truly what the supplier quotes. And then if they make that delivery time, that's fantastic. There is a mechanism to give feedback if they exceed that time, and we monitor that as well to keep an idea to see if people are fudging their delivery times, and so far that has not been an issue. Okay, more questions are coming in. Brian Benacos has said, is there a way to have the OEM vendors not only adjust the cost, but also the list price, the suggested list price in the area? We have a reminder in the system for the OEM supplier to adjust the list price if they are wanting to be competitive on the selling price, but that is not universal across the platform. Another new question, Tony Marigo has asked, what are manufacturers doing about suppliers on stolen cats? Yeah, the interesting thing is obviously the catalytic converters are made by a ton of sub-suppliers. They're truly not made by the OE, and the sub-suppliers are running flat out, keeping up with this increase in volume, adding more shifts, I should say, sorry. And that is about all that is available. So if there is a way for the manufacturer to divert, because they are full exhaust manufacturers, they're manufacturing mid mufflers, end mufflers, as well as cats. They are switching over production to more cats than end mufflers and mid mufflers to meet this increased demand. But this is one of those things that I think caught the industry as a whole by surprise, caught me by surprise. But wanted to let you know that's what the industry is doing as a whole to respond to it. Okay. Kelly Riley has asked, how are these numbers affected by parts that are on the backorder list with no release date? So if it's on the backorder list with no release date as an OE part, the OEMs are not going to quote on that because they cannot deliver on it. So this would be a situation in the PartsTrader system where it would come back as part not quoted on, because again, they are held responsible. If they quote on it, they have to deliver it, and they have to deliver it within the parameters that they suggest. Any other questions coming through? Here's another one. What about backorder parts? For example, a Volvo bumper that has come from the manufacturer in Belgium. Again, if it's not available at a Volvo parts distribution center, the OEs are not going to be able to quote on it in PartsTrader. And that's where if you put that, if the part comes in, it could be coming in as any part type on the initial estimate. If it was backordered from the OEs, they will not quote on it. and potentially a salvage vendor would quote the entire bumper assembly, or an aftermarket, if it's available, they would quote that bumper cover. Okay. Any other questions? It looks like we're getting a couple more in now. I really appreciate this very robust Q&A period. And again, those who are listening to this in a recorded manner can always send me a quick email at greg.horn@partstrader.com. And we will look for more questions to come through. And let's see some more. Yes, Randy has said that in order confirmations do actually record a delivery date. It often changes based on the order date or change on supplier status. Delivery date from order date is more accurate, and it's actually delivers as promised at the order. And Randy is absolutely correct. It gives that sort of certainty to the order system. And looks like we have time for a couple more questions. I want to thank my assistant here, Rachel, who is madly typing in the answers to me. So let's see what else we have. Oh, getting some kudos. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate the kudos. And let's look for any more questions we have. Okay, I think we have all our questions in. Rachel, can you confirm we have all our questions in for now? I may give you back a little bit of your time. And yeah, it looks like we have run through the questions. Again, really appreciate the time you have spent with me today. Any questions, greg.horn@partstrader.com. If you have a question as a supplier, a body shop, or an insurance company around orders happening and quotes in PartsTrader, we can absolutely have a one-on-one, and I can walk you through some of the data one-on-one. And with that, we will end just a tad early, but I truly, truly appreciate everyone's time. Ken Weiss comes in right under the wire here with his last question. He said, do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better? And the answer is most definitely yes. We're hearing, especially from Honda, some of their collision parts as well as hard part delays coming in from Asia. There has been in Southeast Asia in particular at some of their supply plants a resurgence in COVID, the Delta variant, and that is knocking people out of production. So I do actually think, based on what we're seeing day to day, it's a fluid situation, but what we are seeing day to day is looks like it's a potential to make it worse before it gets better. All right, folks, again, we will end at 45 minutes past the hour, and I truly appreciate everyone's attendance. Thank you so much, and I look forward to presenting the fourth quarter. We will have an update on delivery median and 2 standard deviations at that time. Thanks all, and I appreciate your time.